Half swallowed by the earth and the roots, it waited. A forgotten tunnel, breathing cold air into the late summer heat.
I grew up in a small Appalachian town that barely shows up on maps. You'd miss it if you blinked driving through. A couple of gas stations, a diner that's closed more often than open, and the kind of silence that gets into your bones. Folks around here talk in half-truths and warnings, mostly about things that ain't meant to be messed with. One of those things was the old railway tunnel that ran beneath Ridgeline Hill. My granddad used to say it was cursed, that it caved in back in the 70s when they tried running coal shipments through it. Nobody died, at least not officially, but they sealed it up right after. Since then, the ridge has grown thick with trees and brush. Nobody ever found where the tunnel was. Some folks said the land swallowed it whole. My cousin Jake and I grew up chasing those kinds of stories. He was 2 years older, bolder, always the one to go first. I followed him everywhere, into old barns, down into creeks that smelled like rust and rain. When we were teenagers, we made it our summer goal to find that tunnel. Everyone told us it was a myth. That only made Jake more determined. We spent weeks combing the ridge, climbing through briars and rotten stumps, using old mining maps printed off the library computer. Most nights we'd come home filthy and empty-handed, but I remember the last day we searched like it's carved into me. It was late August, hot enough to make the air shimmer, when we found what looked like a sinkhole tucked behind a mess of vines and stone. At first, we thought it was just another old drainage shaft. But when Jake kicked away the leaves, we saw brick archwork beneath, old, soot-black bricks curved into a mouth swallowed by the hillside. The air coming from it was cold. Not cool, cold, like standing in front of a freezer. Jake grinned at me, his flashlight already in hand. "Told you it was real," he said. I told him we should at least tell someone, maybe bring rope or something to mark our way. But Jake was already halfway inside before I finished the sentence. So I followed. The air inside smelled like wet earth and metal. The ground sloped down just enough to make you feel like you were walking into the earth's stomach. The beam from my flashlight caught the old railway tracks beneath the mud, half buried but still there. The tunnel curved to the right, and as soon as we took that bend, the daylight from behind vanished. It was like stepping into a different world, the kind of silence that eats sound. We kept walking, our voices echoing off the stone walls. The air felt heavier the farther we went. I don't know how long we'd been in there, 15 minutes, maybe more, before I noticed something strange. The tunnel was supposed to be short. Every map showed it running straight through the ridge. But the curve never ended. We kept walking, expecting to see an opening, or at least another collapse. Nothing. Just the same slow bend and the same dripping water sounds that never seemed to move. I remember saying Jake's name and hearing it echo 3 times, not just once like it should have. The last echo didn't sound like me. It was slower, almost like something repeating the word because it wanted to taste it. Jake laughed it off at first, said the tunnel was just playing tricks, but then we heard something else. Footsteps. Faint, just behind us, matching our rhythm exactly. We stopped, and so did they. The air didn't move. You could feel it pressing on your chest. "Hello?" Jake shouted, his voice bouncing into the dark. No reply, just that wet, hollow echo coming back wrong. We turned our lights behind us. The tunnel was empty. No footprints in the mud except ours. But the sound came again. Slower now, uneven, like someone was dragging one foot. Jake started breathing fast. I told him it was just old echoes, maybe water dripping somewhere. But when I said it, I realized I didn't believe it. The sound was too deliberate. We picked up the pace, not running but close. The tunnel kept turning, and every few seconds we'd check behind us. The sound followed. Then Jake's light flickered. Just once, then again. And in that flicker, I swear I saw something. Not a shape exactly, more like a shadow that didn't belong. Too tall, too still. We broke into a run. The curve ahead looked brighter, daylight maybe. But the closer we got, the farther it seemed to move, like chasing the end of a hallway in a dream. I yelled for Jake to stop, but he didn't. He just kept running until he vanished around the bend. When I reached the same spot, the tunnel opened to light, but not the same kind we came from. The air outside was colder, and the trees, they didn't look right, taller. The bark was gray instead of brown, and the leaves were thick and waxy. The ridge was still there, but different, older somehow. Jake was standing a few feet ahead, staring at his phone. "It's not working," he said. He showed me the screen. No signal, no time, just a blank clock face spinning. We both turned to look back at the tunnel. The opening was still there, but it didn't look the same. The bricks were darker, almost smooth, and the entrance seemed narrower, like it was closing up. We started walking, trying to find the trail we came in on. It should have been easy. We followed the creek up to the ridge, but nothing looked familiar. The trees were too thick, the undergrowth too wild. We walked for what felt like hours. The light never changed. It stayed this dull gray-blue tone that didn't feel like any time of day. At one point, we heard a train whistle in the distance, faint, old, and broken. That didn't make sense. The line had been shut down for decades. Then, from behind us, a sound like stone grinding against stone. We turned and saw the tunnel again, only now it was half gone, like the earth was swallowing it back. Jake ran toward it, shouting, but I couldn't move. Something about that sound. It wasn't just the ground closing. It was like the mountain was breathing. Every few seconds, the dirt at the base would rise and fall. I yelled for him to stop. He turned around, and for a second I thought I saw someone standing next to him. A figure, tall, black against the pale light. Then it was gone. Jake made it to the mouth, shoved his arm inside, and screamed. I ran, grabbed him, pulled him back. His sleeve was torn, his arm covered in these thin, long scratches, like he'd reached into a nest of barbed wire. We backed away, and the tunnel just sealed. One blink it was there. The next it was smooth hillside. No bricks, no opening, just dirt. We didn't talk the whole way back down the ridge. When we hit the road, our phones started working again. The time said 2 days had passed. Neither of us remembered sleeping. The next morning we went back, or tried to. The spot where we'd climbed up was gone, overgrown with ivy and moss like it hadn't been touched in years. The sinkhole was filled, the ground solid. We showed my uncle, who'd lived there his whole life. He just shook his head, said, "That tunnel ain't been up there for 50 years. Jake stopped talking about it after that. He moved out of state a year later, started working construction. We haven't spoken much since. Sometimes, though, when it rains hard and the ground smells like metal again, I think about that sound, the slow, hollow breathing of the mountain. And once, about 3 years after, I drove by the ridge at night. For just a second, I saw a light, a weak white beam cutting through the trees. Looked just like a flashlight. I stopped the truck and rolled down the window. The air that came through was freezing cold. I called Jake the next morning to ask if he'd been home visiting family. He said no, he hadn't been back in years. I haven't gone near that ridge since. But every now and then, late at night, I hear a train whistle in the distance, and I live 3 counties away. The first time I saw Black Hollow Lake, it looked ordinary enough. Quiet, glassy, ringed by pines that leaned in so close it felt like they were trying to listen. My brother Mark and I had rented a small cabin there for a weekend fishing trip, something we hadn't done in years. We both grew up in the mountains, but after our parents passed, we drifted apart. Mark stayed close to home, working odd jobs and keeping to himself, while I moved to the city. When he called me one day and said, "Let's go fishing just like old times," I could hear something tired in his voice. I didn't want to say no. The cabin was one of those cheap rentals that looked better in photos. Tilted porch, mildewed curtains, and a smell like damp wood and thyme. It sat right on the water's edge, a few feet from an old dock that creaked if you looked at it too hard. The owner, an older woman named Evelyn, met us when we arrived. She handed Mark the keys and said, "Don't go out after dark. The lake gets strange when the fog rolls in." I laughed, thinking she was just playing up the local legend, but she didn't smile. She just looked at the lake for a long time, then added quietly, "It's bottomless, you know. Swallowed a whole village once." Mark loves stories like that. He grew up reading about lost mines and sunken towns. "Yeah, right," he said. "Next, you'll tell us the fish glow in the dark." Evelyn didn't answer. She just walked back to her truck and drove off, her taillights disappearing into the trees like they were being eaten by the forest. That night, after we unpacked, we sat on the porch drinking cheap beer, watching the moonlight break on the water. It was so still it almost looked solid, like black glass. "You know," Mark said, "there really was a town here once, before they flooded it for the reservoir. Some say you can see the rooftops when the water's low." I told him I'd read that too, that sometimes lakes hide old foundations, steeples, even cemeteries. He grinned. "Guess we'll find out in the morning." The next day, fog covered the lake like a blanket. You couldn't tell where the air ended and the water began. It was the kind of fog that made sound feel heavy, like it soaked into you. Mark wanted to go out anyway. I told him we should wait until it cleared, but he just said, "Come on, it's just fog." We pushed off in the rowboat, our breath hanging in front of us. The water made these strange sucking sounds against the oars, like it didn't want to let go. After a while, I noticed something floating in the distance. It looked like a dock, old, half-rotted, but it was moving. Slowly, almost like it was being pulled. "You see that?" I asked. Mark squinted through the mist. "Yeah," he said. "Weird. The closer we got, the more wrong it looked." It wasn't a dock. It was a roof, slanted, shingled, dark with water. The windows beneath it glinted faintly through the fog. I remember feeling this deep animal fear, like something inside me recognized it before my mind did. "Mark," I said quietly, "we should go back." But he was staring, transfixed. Then, somewhere from beneath that roof, we heard it, a woman's voice. Faint, muffled, pleading. "Help me," she said, or something like it. Her voice was full of water, like it came from deep below. Mark looked at me, his eyes wide, then started rowing toward it. I grabbed his arm. "Stop, it's not real," he shook me off. "What if someone's trapped?" The fog thickened, swallowing everything but that sound. I couldn't see the shore anymore, just water and whiteness. He kept rowing until he vanished into it. I called his name. No answer. The oars stopped creaking. The lake went dead silent. I sat there, floating alone, my heart pounding. Then the fog around me shifted like something large had moved beneath the surface. I saw ripples spreading outward, slow and wide, as if the water was breathing. "Mark," I called again. My voice sounded small. When the fog finally lifted, the lake was still, empty. The roof was gone. So was Mark. I sat there for a long time, afraid to move before paddling back to shore. I told myself he must have gone around the bend, maybe to another dock, maybe to shore somewhere else. But when I checked the banks, there was no sign of him. Just the sound of water licking at the stones, gentle and patient. That night, I called the sheriff. They searched the lake for 2 days. Boats, divers, sonar, nothing. No sign of a body, no debris, not even his flannel shirt. The diver who led the search came up shaking his head. "It just drops off," he said. "No bottom, like the earth just keeps going." They told me it was an accident, that he must have tipped the boat, sunk too deep, but I never saw the boat capsize. I never heard a splash. I stayed one more night in that cabin because I didn't know what else to do. Couldn't sleep. The fog rolled in again around midnight, thick as milk. I sat by the window staring at the dock. The water looked black, almost oily. Then I saw movement, something bumping softly against the post. I went outside with a flashlight. The dock was wet. A piece of fabric fluttered there, tied to the wood. It was part of Mark's flannel shirt. Torn clean, knotted tight. I don't remember untying it, but I must have, because I found it in my hand when I came back inside. I sat up all night, waiting for the sun, watching the lake breathe under that fog. At one point, I thought I saw something far out, a light, faint and yellow, like a window underwater. When morning came, I packed up and left. I didn't tell Evelyn what happened. She already knew. When I handed her the keys, she didn't ask where my brother was. She just looked at me with that same tired expression and said, "The lake takes what it's owed." I've tried not to think about it since, but sometimes I hear him. Late at night, when the rain's heavy and the gutters overflow, I swear I can hear Mark's voice in the water. Not calling for help, just calling my name, soft and distant. Once, I even dreamed I was back on that lake, rowing through the fog. I saw the roof again, half submerged, and a window glowing behind the mist. A shape moved inside, someone sitting at a table, head bowed, as if waiting. When I woke, my bedsheets were damp, like I'd been somewhere cold. It's been 5 years. They drained part of Black Hollow Lake last summer for maintenance. They said the divers found remnants of a structure, brick walls, some old metal fittings, maybe the foundation of a house. But what stuck with me was what one of the crewmen told the local paper. We don't know how deep it really goes. Every reading stops around 100 feet, like the signal gets swallowed. Could be it never ends. I haven't been back since. But sometimes when fog settles low in the valley, I get that same feeling I did out there. The sense that something is waiting under the surface. Listening, remembering the sound of my brother's name. I grew up on the edge of the woods where the hills dip low and the wind carries the smell of pine and wet soil. My family's farm sat at the base of an old ridge, a patch of land that's been in our name for generations, but never fully explored. My granddad used to say the woods were older than people ought to mess with, and he meant it. When I was a kid, he'd point up toward the tree line and warn me never to cross the rusted barbed wire that marked our boundary, said it wasn't about property, but about respect. I never asked him what he meant until years later, when I already knew the answer for myself. That day started like any other. It was late autumn when the leaves are dry enough to whisper under your boots, but the air still smells like rain. I'd been hiking the ridge trail behind the farm, something I'd done hundreds of times. The sky was that pale gray that never decides if it wants to rain or snow, and the wind was low, pushing the branches just enough to make them creak. Somewhere along the way, I must have followed a deer path without realizing it, because the trail started to fade, and the woods got quiet in a way that made me stop. There's a kind of silence out there that's not really silence at all. It's the sound of everything listening. When I came across the fence, it barely looked like a fence anymore, just old, twisted barbed wire strung between leaning posts, swallowed by vines. I remembered my granddad's words, but curiosity has a way of feeling like permission when you're alone. I stepped over it. The air changed immediately. It sounds strange, but it felt heavier, like the woods were holding their breath. The trees were closer together here, older too, their trunks gray and swollen, roots curling out of the ground like veins. The light dimmed in that odd way where it's still daytime but feels like dusk. I walked maybe a quarter mile before I saw it, something white through the trees, half hidden by the undergrowth. At first, I thought it was a house, but as I got closer, the shape became clearer. A small church, old and crooked, sitting in a hollow among the trees. Its paint was flaking, the steeple leaning, and every window glowed faintly orange. I thought maybe it was catching the reflection of the sunset, but there was no sun, just that gray sky. Then I realized they weren't reflections. Candles burned inside. There was no road, no footpath, nothing to suggest anyone came or went. Just that church sitting quietly like it had been waiting a long time for someone to find it. I should have turned back. Every instinct in me said so. But there was something about the sight of it that felt expectant. Like if I left, it would notice. I approached slowly, boots crunching on damp leaves. The closer I got, the colder it felt, though I could see the candles flickering warmly behind the glass. The front doors were slightly open. From inside came a faint sound, soft humming, like someone singing to themselves. I can't describe it properly. It didn't sound right, like the melody was too slow, too long between notes. I pushed the door open, and the smell hit me first. Old wood, wax, and something sour underneath, like damp clothes that had never dried. The pews were lined neatly, but every one of them held things that made my stomach twist. Hats, coats, gloves, even pairs of shoes, all arranged carefully, each set taking up a place like their owners had stepped away for just a moment. Some were small, like for children. Some were new, others so old the fabric had fused to the wood beneath. The candles on the walls flickered softly, casting long shadows that swayed over the pews. The humming grew louder. It came from the pulpit at the front, where a man stood facing away. He was tall and thin, shoulders trembling slightly, head bowed. He wore a long black coat that looked damp at the edges, and though the rest of the church was freezing, I could see faint steam rising from his collar, like he was sweating. I froze where I stood. I didn't want to speak, but silence felt worse. "Hello?" I said. My voice echoed off the rafters, bouncing back at me. The humming stopped. The man's head tilted slightly, just enough that I could see the side of his face, or what should have been his face. There was nothing there. No skin, no features, just a grayish hollow, like clay that hadn't set. A sound came out of him then, like air moving through a pipe, deep and uneven. It wasn't quite a moan, not quite a breath, something in between. He started to turn, slow and deliberate. I stepped back, my hand brushing one of the pews. The coats rustled all at once, every sleeve shifting like something had moved beneath them. I ran. The door slammed before I reached it, so hard the candles blew out. The church went black. For a few seconds I could hear nothing but my own breathing. Then came that humming again, closer now, coming from everywhere at once. The smell of wax grew stronger, choking. I stumbled down the aisle, bumping into pews, tripping over shoes that felt too heavy to be empty. Something brushed the back of my neck, light, like fingertips. I didn't look back. I pushed the door hard enough that the latch snapped and burst into the open air. I ran until I hit the fence, tearing my jacket on the barbs as I climbed over. The moment my boots hit the other side, the air felt different again. Lighter, real. When I turned to look, there was nothing there. Just trees, the ridge, and a slope that led down into the hollow. No church, no lights, no sound. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not my parents, not my friends. I told myself it was a trick of the light, or an old hunting cabin that I'd imagined into something worse. But that night, lying in bed, I could still hear that humming. Faint, like it was coming from the woods outside my window. A few days later, I went back, half convinced I'd find the place again. I searched for hours, retracing every step I could remember. But the fence was gone. No posts, no wire, not even the faint smell of rust. It was like it had never been there. Years passed, but sometimes on cold autumn days when the air smells like rain and the woods go quiet, I think about that church. I think about the coats, the hats, the shoes, all waiting patiently in the dark. I don't know what that man was or what I really saw that day, but I know this much. Whatever's beyond that ridge, it doesn't want to be found. Last winter, after my father passed, I was cleaning out the old barn when I found something nailed to one of the beams near the back, an old wooden cross carved roughly by hand. It looked familiar in a way that made my stomach drop. Burned into the wood were the words, "For those who went to service." Now, on certain nights, when the fog settles low over the fields, I swear I can see something faint in the distance through the trees, a soft orange glow, like candlelight, flickering where that ridge used to be. And if I stand there long enough, I can almost hear it again, that slow, lonely humming coming through the wind. I used to chase ghosts for a living, not real ones. At least, that's what I told myself back then. I ran a small YouTube channel with 2 friends, the kind that used clickbait titles like "Real Asylum Footage Gone Wrong" and "Found Footage, Demon in West Virginia." We thought we were just making entertainment, urban exploration dressed up as horror. But that changed the night we went into the mountain outside Harlan County. Locals called it the Ridgeway Tunnel, but if you talked to people who'd lived there long enough, they'd lower their voice and tell you it wasn't a tunnel at all. It used to be a sanatorium, buried under the ridge after a landslide in the 1950s. Nobody ever rebuilt it, just sealed it off, like it was never there. The entrance we found wasn't much to look at. A rusted service door wedged behind thick roots and loose rock, half hidden under a slope of moss. It took us an hour to pry it open. When the air hit my face, it was colder than any cave I'd ever been in. Not just damp, clean, sterile, like a place that had never breathed outside air. I remember looking at our reflection in the metal. Me, Chris, and Danny, grinning like idiots under our headlamps. We thought we were about to get the footage that would blow up our channel. Inside, the tunnel walls were concrete instead of stone. There were still wires nailed along the ceiling and a few broken signs with painted arrows. Lab wing, storage, observation. It didn't feel abandoned. It felt paused. The deeper we went, the more it looked like someone had scrubbed it yesterday. No dust, no cobwebs, no mold. Even the air smelled wrong, faintly metallic, like disinfectant that never faded. We set up lights in the first hallway. Chris cracked jokes, Danny filmed, and I did the usual intro for the video. We're in the Ridgeway facility, rumored to be one of the most haunted places in Appalachia. Locals say screams can still be heard from under the ground. That was the kind of thing we'd always say. But even as I spoke it, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was listening. Every sound came back too soft. No echo, just a muffled hum that made the whole place feel padded. The first odd thing we noticed was the clipboard. It was hanging on a wall beside a cracked light switch, clean as new. The papers were blank, all except the date in the corner, April 12th, 1972. The ink hadn't even faded. Chris thought it was fake, part of some abandoned attraction that never opened. Danny filmed close-ups saying, "This is gold, man." But when I touched the paper, it was cold. Not the kind of cold from damp air. It felt refrigerated. We went deeper, following the hallway toward the observation wing. The floors sloped, slightly down, the air pressure changing like we were descending into something sealed tight. Our radio mics started picking up static even though there was no signal down there. Every so often we'd hear a faint click through the headsets like someone pressing a transmitter button without speaking. The observation wing had double doors. They were half open, one hanging on a bent hinge. Inside, rows of metal beds stretched from wall to wall, each with leather straps buckled neatly across the frames. It looked too organized for a ruin. No graffiti, no debris, not even dust on the floor. Just bed after bed, each one perfectly aligned. Danny walked ahead, camera pointed at the mirrors fixed to the walls between each bed. "Probably for monitoring patients," he said. But the mirrors didn't look like glass, more like steel polished to a perfect reflection. I moved closer, trying to get a clear shot for the video thumbnail. My reflection looked strange, a half-second delayed, like a lag in a video feed. Then something else appeared behind me. It wasn't clear at first, just the outline of a man, tall, motionless, wearing what looked like a white coat. He stood between the rows of beds, maybe 10 feet back. I turned, but the space behind me was empty. When I looked at the mirror again, he was still there. The light caught his face, or what should have been his face, but it was smooth, like someone had drawn skin over his features. Then, without a sound, a thin crack split the mirror from top to bottom, right through where his reflection had been. Chris said something behind me, but it came out faint, like he was underwater. Then the camera lights flickered, all at once. The sound cut out of my headset. Danny's camera shut off completely, even though the battery had been full. When the light came back, all three of us were standing closer together without remembering moving. We left the room fast. No one said anything until we reached the main corridor again. Danny looked pale. "Did you hear that?" he asked. I said I didn't. He said he'd heard breathing, steady, rhythmic, coming from inside one of the beds. He swore one of the straps had been moving, like something was struggling underneath it. Chris told him it was the air pressure messing with him, but we all knew what we'd seen. We decided to pack up, but when we started heading back, the hallway didn't look the same. The signs were gone. The air felt thicker. Every time we turned a corner, it looked like we were looping back into the same corridor, same flickering light, same broken tile. Danny tried to retrace our route on his phone GPS, but there was no signal, no time, just a spinning compass that wouldn't settle. After what felt like an hour, we found the door we came in through, only it wasn't open anymore. The metal had warped, sealed shut like it had melted. That's when Chris started kicking it, yelling. I was trying to help him when Danny said my name. I turned and saw him pointing down the hall. The lights were dimming, one by one, like something was moving through them toward us. We ran. Every direction looked the same. I remember tripping over a bed frame, catching myself on something wet. A strap that felt used, still warm. Somewhere behind us, I heard that breathing again. Not from one person, from many, all in rhythm. When we reached another door, it led into a small lab. There were cabinets full of glass jars, but every jar was empty except one. Inside it was a strip of film, rolled tight like a scroll. Danny unrolled it with his flashlight. It showed 3 figures standing in the same hallway we were in, their backs turned, lights on their heads. It was us. Only in the film, there was a 4th figure standing between us, closer to the camera than any of us had been. His hand rested on my shoulder. We left everything, cameras, lights, our gear. We just wanted out. I don't remember how we found another exit, only that the door we finally pushed through led to a collapsed mine shaft farther down the ridge. We came out into the cold air, filthy, shaking, and bleeding from scrapes we couldn't remember getting. It was nearly dawn. 2 days later, Chris quit the channel. He deleted all our footage. Danny didn't talk much after that. I tried to pretend. It was just panic, just fear. But about a week later, my phone started filling up with images I didn't take. They were all dark, grainy shots from inside the observation wing. The same angles Danny filmed, but taken from farther away, like someone was watching us. In each new one, that man in the white coat stood closer, clearer. The last photo came a month later. I was sitting in my car outside my house when it popped up in my gallery, time-stamped just 1 minute earlier. It showed my front porch, the window beside me, and reflected in the glass, right over my shoulder, was that same tall shape. I don't go near mountains anymore. Not tunnels, not basements, not hospitals. Every once in a while, I'll wake up to that smell again, the metallic cold of disinfectant, like air that's never known sunlight. And sometimes, when my phone lights up in the dark, I see the notification before it disappears. 1 new photo added to your library. I've stopped checking what they are, but deep down, I know where they're coming from. That place never wanted to be left alone. It just wanted to be remembered.